In the 50th year of the life of Abram, who is the son of Terah, Abram came forth from the house of Noah, and went to his father's house. Abram knew the Lord, and he went in the Lord's ways and instructions, and the Lord his God was with him. Terah his father was in those days, still captain of the host of King Nimrod, and he still followed strange gods. When Abram came to his father's house and saw 12 gods standing there in their temples, the anger of Abram was kindled when he saw these images in his father's house. Therefore, Abram said, As the Lord lives, these images will not remain in my father's house. Therefore, will the Lord who created me do unto me if in 3 days' time I do not break them all? Meanwhile, Abram went from them, and his anger burned within him. He quickly went from the chamber to his father's outer court, and he found his father sitting in the court, and all his servants with him, and Abram came and sat before him. Then Abram asked his father, saying, Father, tell me where God is who created heaven and earth and all the sons of men upon earth, and who created you and me? Terah answered his son Abram and said, Behold, those who created us are all with us in the house. Abram said to his father, My lord, show them to me, I pray. Then Terah brought Abram into the chamber of the inner court, and Abram saw, and behold, the whole room was full of gods of wood and stone, 12 great images and others less than they without number. Moreover, Terah said to his son, Behold, these are they which made all you see upon earth, and which created me and you, and all mankind. Then, Terah bowed down to his gods, and he then went away from them, and Abram, his son, went away with him. When Abram had gone from them, he went to his mother and sat before her, and he said to his mother, Behold, my father has shown me those who made heaven and earth, and all the sons of men. Now, therefore, hasten and fetch a young goat from the flock, and make of it savory meat, that I may bring it to my father's gods as an offering for them to eat, perhaps I may thereby become acceptable to them. Abram has a plan to mock the false gods, and to prove to his father that they are not gods at all, that he is worshipping false gods, and to prove to him the one and only true God who created heaven and earth and mankind. His mother did so, and she got a young goat, and made savory meat, and brought it to Abram, and Abram took the savory meat from his mother and brought it before his father's gods, and he drew near to them that they might eat, and Terah his father did not know of it. Abram saw on the day when he was sitting among them, that they had no voice, no hearing, no motion, and not one of them could stretch forth his hand to eat. Abram mocked them, and said, Surely the savory meat that I prepared has not pleased them, or perhaps it was too little for them, and for that reason they would not eat. Therefore, tomorrow I will prepare fresh savory meat, better and more plentiful than this, in order that I may see the result. It was on the next day that Abram directed his mother concerning the savory meat, and his mother rose and fetched 3 fine young goats from the flock, and she made of them some excellent savory meat, such as her son was fond of, and she gave it to her son Abram, and Terah his father did not know of it. Abram took the savory meat from his mother and brought it before his father's gods into the chamber, and he came near unto them that they might eat, and he placed it before them, and Abram sat before them all day, thinking perhaps they might eat, and Abram viewed them, and behold, they had neither voice nor hearing, nor did one of them stretch forth his hand to the meat to eat. In the evening of that day, in that house, Abram was clothed with the Spirit of God. He called out and said, Woe unto my father and this wicked generation, whose hearts are all inclined to vanity, who serve these idols of wood and stone which can neither eat, smell, hear nor speak, who have mouths without speech, eyes without sight, ears without hearing, hands without feeling, and legs which cannot move, like them are those that made them and that trust in them. Therefore, when Abram saw all these things, his anger was kindled against his father, and he hastened and took a hatchet in his hand, and came unto the chamber of the gods, and he broke all his father's gods. In addition, when Abram had done breaking the images, he placed the hatchet in the hand of the great God which was there before them, and he went out, and Terah his father came home, for he had heard at the door the sound of the striking of the hatchet, so, Terah came into the house to know what this is about. Terah, having heard the noise of the hatchet in the room of images, ran to the room to the images, and he met Abram going out. Terah entered the room and found all the idols fallen down and broken, and the hatchet in the hand of the largest, which was not broken, and the savory meat which Abram his son had made was still before them. When Terah saw this, his anger was greatly kindled, and he ran and went from the room to Abram, and found Abram his son still sitting in the house, and he said to him, "What is this work you have done to my gods?" Abram answered Terah, his father, and said, "Not so, my lord, for I brought savory meat before them, and when I came near to them with the meat that they might eat, they all at once stretched forth their hands to eat before the great one had put forth his hand to eat, and the large one saw their works that they did before him, and his anger was violently kindled against them, and he went and took the hatchet that was in the house and came to them and broke them all, and behold, the hatchet is until now in his hand, as you see." Therefore, Terah's anger was kindled against his son Abram. When he spoke this, Terah said to Abram his son in his anger, "What is this tale that you have told? You speak lies to me. Is there in these gods spirit, soul, or power to do all you have told me? Are they not wood and stone, and have I not myself made them, and can you speak such lies, saying that the large God that was with them smote them? It is you that did place the hatchet in his hands, and then said he smote them all." Terah believes himself that they are not gods at all, for he confessed that they are just wood and stone, that have no power, no spirit, or soul, and with his own hands he made them himself. Abram answered his father and said to him, "Therefore, how can you then serve these idols in whom there is no power to do anything? Can those idols in which you trust deliver you? Can they hear your prayers when you call upon them? Can they deliver you from the hands of your enemies, or will they fight your battles for you against your enemies, that you should serve wood and stone which can neither speak nor hear? Now surely it is not good for you nor for the sons of men that are connected with you, to do these things. Are you so silly, so foolish, or so short of understanding that you will serve wood and stone, and do after this manner? Moreover, forget the Lord God who made heaven and earth, and who created you in the earth, and thereby bring a great evil upon your souls in this matter by serving stone and wood. Did not our fathers in days of old sin in this manner, and the Lord God of the universe brought the waters of the flood upon them and destroyed the whole earth? And how can you continue to do this and serve gods of wood and stone, that cannot hear, or speak, or deliver you from oppression, thereby bringing down the anger of the God of the universe upon you? Now therefore refrain from this, my father, and bring not evil upon your soul and the souls of your household." Therefore, Abram hurried and took the hatchet from his father's largest idol, with which he broke it and ran away. Terah, seeing all that Abram had done, made haste to go from his house, and he went to the king, and he came before Nimrod and stood before him, and he bowed down to the king, and the king said, "What do you want?" Terah said, "I beg you, my lord, to hear me. Now 50 years back a child was born to me, and thus has he done to my gods, and thus has he spoken, and now therefore, my lord and king, send for him that he may come before you, and judge him according to the law, that we may be delivered from his evil." Nimrod sent 3 men of his servants, and they went and brought Abram before the king. Nimrod and all his princes and servants were that day sitting before him, and Terah sat also before them. The king said to Abram, "What is this that you have done to your father and to his gods?" Abram answered the king in the words that he spoke to his father, and he said, "The large God that was with them in the house did to them that you have heard." The king said to Abram, "Had they the power to speak and eat and do as you have said?" Abram answered the king, saying, "If there be no power in them, why do you serve them and cause the sons of men to err through your follies? Do you imagine that they can deliver to you or do anything small or great, that you should serve them? And why will you not sense the God of the whole universe, who created you, and in whose power it is to kill and keep alive? O foolish, simple, and ignorant king, woe unto you forever! I thought you would teach your servants the upright way, but you have not done this, but has filled the whole earth with your sins and the sins of your people who have followed your ways. Do you not know, or have you not heard, that this evil which you do, our ancestors sinned therein in days of old, and the eternal God brought the waters of the flood upon them and destroyed them all, and also destroyed the whole earth on their account? Now will you and your people rise up now and do like unto this work, in order to bring down the anger of the Lord God of the universe, and to bring evil upon you and the whole earth? Now therefore put away this evil deed which you do, and serve the God of the universe, as your soul is in his hands, and then it will be well with you. Nevertheless, if your wicked heart will not hearken to my words to cause you to forsake your evil ways, and to serve the eternal God, then will you die in shame in the latter days, you, your people, and all who are connected with you, hearing your words, or walking in your evil ways. Therefore, when Abram had ceased speaking before the king and princes, Abram lifted up his eyes to the heavens, and he said, The Lord sees all the wicked, and he will judge them. It was when King Nimrod heard the words of Abram, he ordered him to be put into prison, and Abram was 10 days in prison. At the end of those days the king ordered that all the kings, princes, and governors of different provinces and the sages should come before him, and they sat before him, and Abram was still in the house of confinement. The king said to the princes and sages, Have you heard what Abram, the son of Terah, has done to his father? Thus has he done to him, and I ordered him to be brought before me, and thus has he spoken, his heart did not misgive him, neither did he stir in my presence, and behold now he is confined in the prison. Therefore, decide what judgment is due to this man who reviled the king, who spoke and did all the things that you heard. All the princes and sages answered the king saying, The man who reviled the king should be hanged upon a tree, but having done all the things that he said, and having despised our gods, he must therefore be burned to death, for this is the law in this matter. If it pleases the king to do this, let him order his servants to kindle a fire both night and day in your brick furnace, and then we will cast this man into it. Therefore, the king did so, and he commanded his servants that they should prepare a fire for 3 days and 3 nights in the king's furnace, that is in Kasdim or Chaldea, and the king ordered them to take Abram from prison and bring him out to be burned. All the king's servants, princes, lords, governors, and judges, and all the inhabitants of the land, about 900,000 men, stood opposite the furnace to see Abram. All the women and little ones crowded upon the roofs and towers to see what they were doing with Abram, and they all stood together at a distance, and there was not a man left that did not come on that day to behold the scene. Therefore, when Abram was come, the conjurers of the king and the sages saw Abram, and they cried out to the king, saying, Our sovereign lord, surely this is the man whom we know to have been the child at whose birth the great star swallowed the 4 stars, which we declared to the king now 50 years since. Behold now his father has also transgressed your commands, and mocked you by bringing you another child, which you did kill. It was when King Nimrod heard their words, he was exceedingly angry, and he ordered Terah to be brought before him. The king said, Have you heard what the conjurers have spoken? Now tell me truly, how did you, and if you will speak truth, you will be acquitted. Seeing that the king's anger was so kindled, Terah said to the king, My lord and king, you have heard the truth, and what the sages have spoken is right. The king said, How could you do this thing, to transgress my orders and to give me a child that you did not beget, and to take value for him? Terah answered the king, Because my tender feelings were excited for my son, at that time, and I took a son of my handmaid, and I brought him to the king. The king said, Who advised you to this? Tell me, do not hide anything from me, and then you will not die. Terah was greatly terrified in the king's presence, and he said to the king, It was Haran my eldest son who advised me to this. Haran was in those days 32 years old, when Abram was born. However, Haran did not advise his father to anything, for Terah said this to the king in order to deliver his soul from the king, for he feared greatly. Then the king said to Terah, Haran your son who advised you to this will die through fire with Abram, for the sentence of death is upon him for having rebelled against the king's desire in doing this thing. Haran at that time felt inclined to follow the ways of Abram, but he kept it within himself. Haran said in his heart, Behold, now the king has seized Abram on account of these things which Abram did, and it will come to pass, that if Abram prevails over the king I will follow him, but if the king prevails, I will go after the king. Haran was double-minded. It was when Terah had spoken to the king concerning Haran his son, the king ordered Haran to be seized with Abram, and they brought them both, Abram, and Haran his brother, to cast them into the fire, and all the inhabitants of the land and the king's servants and princes and all the women and little ones were there, standing that day over them. The king's servants took Abram and his brother, and they stripped them of all their clothes excepting their lower garments which were upon them, and they bound their hands and feet with linen cords, and the servants of the king lifted them up and cast them both into the furnace. The Lord loved Abram and he had compassion over him, and the Lord came down and delivered Abram from the fire and he was not burned. All the cords with which they bound him were burned, and Abram remained and walked about in the fire. Sadly, Haran died when they had cast him into the fire, and he was burned to ashes, for his heart was not perfect with the Lord, and those men who cast them into the fire, the flame of the fire spread over them, and they were burned, and 12 men of them died. As Abram walked in the midst of the fire 3 days and 3 nights, and all the servants of the king saw him walking in the fire, and they came and told the king, saying, Behold, we have seen Abram walking about in the midst of the fire, and even the lower garments which are upon him are not burned, but the cord with which he was bound is burned. When the king heard their words, his heart fainted and he would not believe them, so he sent other faithful princes to see this matter, and they went and saw it and told it to the king, and the king rose to go and see it for himself, and he saw Abram walking back and forth in the midst of the fire, and he saw Haran's body burned, and the king wondered greatly. The king ordered Abram to be taken out from the fire, and his servants approached to take him out and they could not, for the fire was round about and the flame ascending toward them from the furnace. Therefore, the king's servants fled from it, and the king rebuked them, saying, Make haste and bring Abram out of the fire that you will not die. The servants of the king again approached to bring Abram out, and the flames came upon them and burned their faces so that 8 of them died. When the king saw that his servants could not approach the fire lest they should be burned, the king called to Abram, O servant of the God who is in heaven, go forth from amidst the fire and come here before me, and Abram hearkened to the voice of the king, and he went forth from the fire and came and stood before the king. When Abram came out of the fire, the king and all his servants saw Abram coming before the king, with his lower garments upon him, for they were not burned, but the cord with which he was bound was burned, and the king said to Abram, How is it that you were not burned in the fire? Abram said to the king, The God of heaven and earth in whom I trust and who has all in his power, he delivered me from the fire into which you did cast me. This was how Haran died, the brother of Abram. He died before his father Terah in his native land, in Ur of the Chaldeans. He was burned to ashes, and they sought for his body, and they found it consumed. Haran was 82 years old when he died in the fire of Kasdim or Chaldea. The surviving children of Haran were Lot, his son, and his 2 daughters, Milcah and Sarai. Then the king, princes, and inhabitants of the land, seeing that Abram was delivered from the fire, they came and bowed down to Abram. Abram said to them, Do not bow down to me, but bow down to the God of the world who made you, and serve him, and go in his ways, for it is he who delivered me from out of this fire, and it is he who created the souls and spirits of all men, and formed man in his mother's womb, and brought him forth into the world, and it is he who will deliver those who trust in him from all pain. This thing seemed very wonderful in the eyes of the king and princes, that Abram was saved from the fire and that Haran was burned, and the king gave Abram many presents, and he gave him his 2 head servants from his house, the name of one was Oni and the name of the other was Eliezer. All the king's princes and servants gave Abram many gifts of silver and gold and pearl, and the king and his princes sent him away, and he went in peace. However, many of the king's servants followed him, and about 300 men joined him, and Abram served the Lord his God all the days of his life, and he walked in his ways and followed his law. It was from that day forward Abram inclined the hearts of the sons of men to serve the Lord. In the later years of his life, behold, King Nimrod sat in Babel upon the throne, and the king fell asleep and dreamed that he was standing with his troops and hosts in a valley opposite the king's furnace. He lifted up his eyes and saw a man in the likeness of Abram coming forth from the furnace, and that he came and stood before the king with his drawn sword, and then sprang to the king with his sword, when the king fled from the man, for he was afraid, and while he was running, the man threw an egg upon the king's head, and the egg became a great river, and the king dreamed that all his troops sank in that river and died, and the king took flight with 3 men who were before him and he escaped. The king looked at these men and they were clothed in princely dresses as the garments of kings and had the appearance and majesty of kings. In addition, while they were running, the river again turned to an egg before the king, and there came forth from the egg a young bird which came before the king and flew at his head and plucked out the king's eye. Moreover, the king was grieved at the sight, and he awoke out of his sleep and his spirit was agitated, and he felt a great terror. When morning came, King Nimrod rose from his couch in fear, and he ordered all the wise men and magicians to come before him and he related his dream to them. However, a wise servant of the king, whose name was Anuki, answered the king, saying, "This is nothing else but the evil of Abram and his seed which will spring up against my lord and king in the latter days. Moreover, behold, the day will come when Abram and his seed and the children of his household will war with my king, and they will smite all the king's hosts and his troops. In addition, as to what you have said concerning 3 men which you did see like unto yourself, and which did escape, this means that only you will escape with 3 kings from the kings of the earth who will be with you in battle. In addition, that which you saw of the river which turned to an egg as at first, and the young bird plucking out your eye, this means nothing else but the seed of Abram which will slay the king in latter days. This is my king's dream, and this is its interpretation, and the dream is true, and the interpretation which your servant has given you is right. Now therefore my king, surely you knows that it is now 52 years since your sages saw this at the birth of Abram, and if my king will allow Abram to live in the earth it will be to the injury of my lord and king, for all the days that Abram live, neither you nor your kingdom will be established, for this was known formerly at his birth, and why will not my king slay him, that his evil may be kept from you in latter days?" Moreover, Nimrod hearkened to the voice of Anuki, and he sent some of his servants in secret to go and seize Abram and bring him before the king to be put to death. Eliezer, Abram's servant whom King Nimrod had given him, was at that time in the presence of the king, and he heard what Anuki had advised the king, and what the king had said to cause Abram's death. Therefore, Eliezer said to Abram, "Hasten, rise up and save your soul, that you may not die through the hands of the king, for thus did he see in a dream concerning you, and thus did Anuki interpret it, and thus also did Anuki advise the king concerning you." Abram hearkened to the voice of Eliezer, and Abram hastened and ran for safety to the house of Noah and his son Shem, and he concealed himself there and found a place of safety, and the king's servants came to Abram's house to seek him, but they could not find him. They searched throughout the country, and he was not to be found, and they went and searched in every direction, and he was not to be met with. Therefore, when the king's servants could not find Abram they returned to the king, but the king's anger against Abram was calmed, as they did not find him, and the king drove from his mind this matter concerning Abram. However, Abram was concealed in Noah's house for 1 month, until the king had forgotten this matter, but Abram was still afraid of the king. Terah came to see Abram his son secretly in the house of Noah. Now Terah was very great in the eyes of the king. Then Abram said to his father, "Do you not know that the king thinks to slay me, and to annihilate my name from the earth by the advice of his wicked counselors? Now whom have you here and what have you in this land? Arise, let us go together to the land of Canaan, that we may be delivered from his hand, lest you perish also through him in the latter days. Do you not know, or have you not heard that it is not through love that Nimrod gives you all this honor, but it is only for his benefit that he bestows all this good upon you? Therefore, if he does unto you greater good than this, Surely these are only vanities of the world, for wealth and riches cannot avail in the day of wrath and anger. Now therefore hearken to my voice, and let us arise and go to the land of Canaan, out of the reach of injury from Nimrod, and serve the Lord who created you in the earth, and it will be well with you, and cast away all the vain things which you pursue. Abram ceased to speak, when Noah and his son Shem answered Terah, saying, True is the word which Abram have said unto you. Therefore, Terah hearkened to the voice of his son Abram, and Terah did all that Abram said, for this was from the Lord, that the king should not cause Abram's death. Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to Haran and dwelt there. Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran who died in the fire, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, the wife of his son Abram, and all the souls of his household, and went with them from Ur Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. When they came as far as the land of Haran they remained there, for it was exceedingly good land for pasture, and of sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. Therefore, the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. The people of the land of Haran saw that Abram was good and upright with God and men, and that the Lord his God was with him, and some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abram, and he taught them the instruction of the Lord and his ways, and these men remained with Abram in his house, and they adhered to him. It came to pass many years later in the days of Nimrod, who is also called Amraphel, king of Shinar at this time, that he joined Arioch king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer king of Elam, and Tidal king of nations, to make war with Bera king of Sodom, Birsha king of Gomorrah, Shinab king of Admah, Shem-Eber king of Zeboim, and king of Bela, or Zor as it was then called. All these kings joined together in the valley of Siddim, called the Salt Sea, to war. The reason for the war was that for 12 years the kings that Chedorlaomer were warring against served him, and in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and attacked many cities, and later they attacked Sodom where Lot was dwelling, and sacked the city of Sodom and took him and others captive. However, Abram brought back all the goods, and also brought back his nephew Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people of Sodom. Later, the Lord made a covenant with Abram and changed his name to Abraham. The Lord promised and said to Abraham, I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and your descendants after you. In the latter days, a descendant, a seed of Abraham, did kill Nimrod. The wise servant of King Nimrod named Anuki, was given the correct interpretation of Nimrod's dream. It would be Isaac, the son of Abraham, who will take a wife named Rebekah. Rebekah would be the daughter of Bethuel. Bethuel was the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Rebekah did conceive and bore two sons, a set of twins, named Jacob and Esau, Esau being the eldest. Therefore, the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. Esau frequently went in the field to hunt, and Nimrod king of Babel, who is called at this time, Amraphel, also frequently went with his mighty men to hunt in the field, and to walk about with his men in the cool of the day. Nimrod was observing Esau all the days, for a jealousy was formed in the heart of Nimrod against Esau all the days, and on a certain day Esau went in the field to hunt, and he found Nimrod walking in the wilderness with his two men. All his mighty men and his people were with him in the wilderness, but they removed at a distance from him, and they went from him in different directions to hunt, and Esau concealed himself from Nimrod, and he lurked for him in the wilderness. Nimrod and two of his men that were with him came to the place where Esau was. Then Esau started suddenly from his lurking place, and drew his sword, and hurried and ran to Nimrod and cut off his head. Esau fought a desperate fight with the two men that were with Nimrod, and when they called out to him, Esau turned to them and smote them to death with his sword. Therefore, All the mighty men of Nimrod, who had left him to go to the wilderness, heard the cry at a distance, and they knew the voices of those 2 men, and they ran to know the cause of it, when they found their king and the 2 men that were with him lying dead in the wilderness. And when Esau saw the mighty men of Nimrod coming at a distance, he fled, and thereby escaped, and Esau took the valuable garments of Nimrod, which Nimrod's father had bequeathed to Nimrod, and with which Nimrod prevailed over the whole land, and Esau ran and concealed them in his house. Therefore, after many years later, Nimrod, Amraphel, dream came true. He died by a seed of Abraham, just as his dream was interpreted. Esau, Abram's grandson, slayed Nimrod, for Esau was also a skillful hunter in the field. Amen. If this video was a blessing to you, please subscribe, like, and share.